My brothers and sisters, we live in a time where life moves very fast. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and before we know it, years have passed. We chase success, we chase stability, we chase happiness, but deep inside, many hearts still feel restless. Not because we lack possessions, but because we lack connection. And the most painful distance is not between people, it is the distance between the heart and its creator. Allah, in His mercy, did not burden us with what we cannot carry. He did not ask us to abandon the world to find Him. Instead, He gave us something so simple, so light on the tongue, yet so heavy on the scale, dhikr. Words that take seconds to say, but can change the direction of your life. You see, transformation in Islam does not always come through dramatic moments. It often begins quietly, softly, with sincerity. A small habit repeated daily can soften a hardened heart, calm an anxious mind, and bring light into the darkest moments. And this is why consistency matters more than quantity. What you do every day shapes who you become. Imagine committing just for 30 days, not to perfection, but to remembrance. Not long hours, but meaningful moments. Dhikr that you carry into your mornings, your struggles, your walks, and even your silence. Because when the heart remembers Allah, clarity replaces confusion, patience replaces anger, and hope replaces despair. Tonight, I want to share with you 3 daily forms of dhikr, simple, powerful, and transformative. If you hold on to them sincerely for the next 30 days, by the permission of Allah, you may not recognize the person you become. Not because your problems disappear, but because you change, and that changes everything. We often underestimate the power of small, consistent actions because we live in a world that celebrates instant results and dramatic change. We are taught to believe that transformation must be loud, visible, and overwhelming. But when we look at how Allah works in our lives, we realize that real change is usually quiet. It begins with something small, something simple, something that may not even be noticed by others, but it is deeply seen by Allah. In Islam, consistency holds a special place. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that the most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are consistent, even if they are small. This tells us something profound about how change truly happens. Allah is not asking you to exhaust yourself. He is not asking you to do what you cannot sustain. He is asking you to keep showing up day after day, moment after moment, even when you feel nothing, even when motivation is low, even when life feels heavy. Think about how habits shape us. A single drop of water means nothing when it falls once, but when it falls continuously, over time it shapes rock. In the same way, a single moment of remembrance may feel insignificant. Saying a short dhikr once may not feel life-changing, but when that remembrance becomes part of your daily rhythm, it begins to reshape your heart. Slowly, gently, without force. The beauty of small, consistent dhikr is that it fits into real life. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need silence, long hours, or isolation. You can remember Allah while driving, walking, waiting, cooking, or lying awake at night. This makes remembrance accessible to everyone: the busy parent, the exhausted worker, the student under pressure, the person struggling just to get through the day. Islam is not a religion for monks. It is a religion for human beings living real lives. When you repeat a small act of dhikr every day, something remarkable happens. At first, you are simply saying words. But over time, those words begin to speak back to you. They begin to influence how you think, how you react, how you see your problem. A person who consistently remembers Allah becomes less reactive and more reflective, less anxious and more trusting. Not because their life becomes easier, but because their heart becomes stronger. Consistency also builds sincerity. When something is small, there is no room for showing off. No one applauds you for whispering dhikr under your breath. No one sees it. And that is exactly why it is powerful. It becomes something purely between you and Allah. And when Allah sees you turning to Him regularly, even in small ways, He opens doors you never expected. Many people wait for motivation before they act. Islam teaches us something different. Action often comes before feeling. You remember Allah even when your heart feels dry, and slowly the heart softens. You make dhikr even when you feel distracted, and slowly focus returns. This is why small consistency beats bursts of intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency builds roots. Over 30 days, small daily dhikr begins to rewire your inner world. You become more aware of Allah in moments where you previously felt alone. When something goes wrong, your first instinct shifts from panic to remembrance. When something goes right, gratitude flows more naturally. This doesn't happen overnight, but it happens inevitably when you persist. Shaitan understands this, which is why he doesn't always try to stop you from doing good altogether. Sometimes he just convinces you that small deeds are not worth it, that if you can't do a lot, you should do nothing. This is one of his greatest tricks, because Allah never asks for a lot all at once. He asks for sincerity and continuity. Small consistent dhikr also protects you. It acts like a spiritual shield. Life will still throw challenges your way: loss, disappointment, fear, uncertainty, but your heart will no longer be defenseless. Remembrance becomes your anchor. When everything feels unstable, you hold on to the one who never changes. Perhaps the most beautiful part of small consistent actions is that they grow. What starts as a few seconds of dhikr can turn into minutes. What starts as awareness can turn into love. What starts as discipline can turn into longing. And all of this begins without pressure, without guilt, without overwhelm. Allah is Al-Latif, the most gentle, and He loves gentle, steady progress. So never look down on a small daily act of remembrance. A quiet dhikr you repeat each day may be the very thing that transforms your heart, realigns your priorities, and changes your relationship with Allah in ways you never imagined. And when 30 days pass, you may realize that the biggest change was not around you, but within you. In the middle of everything we chase in this world, it is easy to forget that the greatest gift we have already been given is access to Allah Himself. Many people imagine that closeness to Allah requires knowledge they don't have, time they can't find, or a level of spirituality they believe they haven't reached. But Allah, in His infinite mercy, made the door to Him wide open. He placed the key in something so simple, so light, and so overlooked: dhikr. This is not a burden placed on us. It is a gift extended to us. Dhikr is not just the repetition of words. It is a divine invitation. When Allah allows your tongue to remember Him, it is a sign that He wants good for you. Not everyone is granted this. Some people are busy, but busy without remembrance. Others are successful, but empty. Dhikr is Allah reminding you that no matter where you are, no matter how broken or distracted you feel, you are still welcome in His presence. What makes dhikr extraordinary is that it requires no prerequisites. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be free of sin. You do not need to feel spiritually strong. In fact, dhikr is often the starting point for healing. When a person feels distant from Allah, remembrance becomes the bridge back. When the heart feels heavy, dhikr becomes relief. When the mind feels restless, dhikr becomes calm. Allah could have made remembrance difficult. He could have tied it to specific times, conditions, or states. But instead, He allowed it everywhere. In ease and in hardship, in joy and in sorrow, in strength and in weakness. This tells us something profound about Allah's love. He wants to be remembered not because He needs it, but because we need it. When you engage in dhikr daily, you begin to realize that it changes your relationship with Allah. You stop seeing Him as distant and start feeling His closeness. The Quran reminds us that when we remember Allah, He remembers us. Imagine that. The Lord of the heavens and the earth remembering you personally, acknowledging you, turning towards you. There is no honor greater than this. This awareness reshapes how you see your life. Problems no longer feel random or meaningless. You begin to trust that there is wisdom even in difficulty. Dhikr softens the heart, so it can accept divine decree with patience. It teaches the soul to surrender without despair. Over time, remembrance becomes a lens through which you view everything. Dhikr also cleans the heart. Just as dust settles on a surface when it is left unattended, the heart gathers stains through sin, negligence, and worldly attachment. Remembrance acts like polish. Each repetition removes a layer of rust. You may not notice it immediately, but eventually the heart begins to shine again. A heart that remembers Allah becomes more sensitive to right and wrong, more responsive to guidance, and more inclined toward goodness. There is also a deep sense of companionship found in dhikr. Many people feel alone, even when surrounded by others. Dhikr reminds you that you are never truly alone. When you remember Allah in a quiet moment, you are in the company of the most merciful. This companionship brings comfort that no human presence can replace. It fills a space inside the soul that nothing else can reach. Over 30 days, daily dhikr nurtures awareness. You start catching yourself before reacting with anger. You pause before speaking harshly. You reflect before making decisions. This is not because you suddenly became perfect, but because remembrance creates space between impulse and action. In that space, faith grows. Dhikr also trains the tongue and the heart together. At first, the tongue may move faster than the heart, but with repetition, the heart follows. Eventually, remembrance flows naturally, without force. It becomes part of who you are. You begin to miss it when it is absent. That longing itself is a sign of growth. One of the greatest blessings of dhikr is that it carries reward far beyond the effort it requires. Simple words carry immense weight with Allah. And on a day when scales will be set and deeds will be measured, those words may be heavier than we ever imagined. This is Allah's generosity. He multiplies reward for what seems small to us. In a world full of noise, dhikr brings clarity. In a life full of uncertainty, it brings stability. In a heart full of questions, it brings peace. It is not a solution that removes hardship, but it gives you the strength to carry it. And when practiced daily, even for a few moments, it transforms remembrance from an occasional act into a way of living. Allah did not give us dhikr to complicate our lives. He gave it to simplify them, to reconnect us to our purpose, to remind us who we belong to. And when you treat dhikr as the gift it is, not an obligation to rush through, you begin to experience its true power. Over time, you realize that remembrance was never about the words alone. It was about returning to Allah again and again until the heart finally feels at home. Real change does not begin with what people see. It begins in the quiet places of the heart, where no one is watching and no one is applauding. Many people spend their lives trying to fix the outside changing environments, relationships, appearances, or circumstances, hoping that inner peace will follow. But Islam teaches us a powerful truth. When the heart is right, everything else begins to fall into place. And when the heart is neglected, no amount of external success can bring true contentment. The heart is the command center of the human being. It shapes intentions, reactions, priorities, and choices. When the heart is connected to Allah, even difficulties feel manageable. When the heart is distant, even blessings feel empty. This is why Allah focuses so much on the heart in the Quran, and why the Prophet ﷺ reminded us that if the heart is sound, the entire body is sound. Dhikr works first and foremost on the inside. Before it changes behavior, it changes awareness. Before it affects actions, it affects intention. When a person begins to remember Allah daily, even in simple ways, something subtle happens. The heart starts waking up. It becomes more conscious of Allah's presence, more alert to its own state, more sensitive to what draws it closer to or further from Him. This internal shift is not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or sudden perfection. It comes quietly. You begin to notice your thoughts more. You catch yourself before certain words leave your mouth. You feel a moment of hesitation before reacting with anger or arrogance. These are signs that the heart is becoming alive again. And an alive heart responds differently to life. One of the most profound internal transformations brought by dhikr is the shift from control to trust. Many hearts are exhausted because they are trying to carry what they were never meant to carry, worrying about outcomes, fearing the future, replaying the past. Dhikr gently reminds the heart that Allah is in control, not just in theory, but in reality. Over time, remembrance replaces constant worry with reliance and anxiety with acceptance. This does not mean problems disappear. It means the heart is no longer crushed by them. A heart anchored in remembrance learns to say, Allah is sufficient, not as a slogan, but as a lived conviction. And that conviction changes how you walk through hardship. You become steadier, calmer, more patient. Dhikr also purifies intention. Many good actions lose their value because they are done for the wrong reasons: approval, validation, recognition. But when the heart remembers Allah often, it becomes less concerned with people's opinions. You begin to care more about Allah's acceptance than human applause. This is a deep internal freedom. It lifts a heavy burden from the soul. As the heart changes, priorities change. Things that once felt urgent lose their grip. Things that once felt distant become important. This is not forced. It happens naturally. When Allah becomes central in the heart, everything else finds its proper place. The dunya stops being the ultimate goal and becomes a means, not an end. Internal transformation also brings humility. Dhikr reminds the heart of its dependence on Allah. No matter how capable or accomplished a person is, remembrance keeps them grounded. It teaches the heart that every blessing is from Allah and every strength is temporary. This humility softens interactions, strengthens relationships, and removes arrogance that poisons the soul. Over 30 days of consistent dhikr, the heart begins to experience moments of clarity. You start seeing yourself more honestly, not with self-hatred, but with self-awareness. You recognize weaknesses without despair and strengths without pride. This balance is a sign of a heart that is maturing spiritually. Dhikr also heals internal wounds. Some pains are not visible. Regret, guilt, grief, disappointment, these sit quietly inside the heart. Remembrance does not erase the memory of pain, but it changes how the heart carries it. It introduces mercy where there was self-blame, hope where there was despair, and light where there was heaviness. Perhaps one of the greatest internal changes is the sense of purpose dhikr restores. Many people feel lost, not because they lack direction, but because they lack meaning. Remembrance reconnects the heart to why it exists in the first place, to know Allah, to worship Him, to return to Him. When this purpose becomes clear again, life feels less confusing. What is beautiful about internal transformation is that it eventually shows on the outside without effort. Patience becomes visible, character improves, speech softens, reactions become measured. But all of this flows naturally because the source, the heart, has changed. Islam does not demand behavior change without heart change. It nurtures the heart first, knowing everything else will follow. Dhikr is not about escaping reality. It is about engaging with reality from a place of faith. A heart that remembers Allah is not detached from the world. It is anchored while moving through it. This is strength. This is balance. And when 30 days pass, you may not be able to point to a single dramatic moment, but you will notice something deeper. You respond differently. You think differently. You feel differently. That is the power of internal transformation. Quiet, profound, lasting. And it all begins with remembering Allah consistently, sincerely, and patiently, until the heart becomes a place where faith feels alive again. Many people never begin a journey to Allah. because they believe they must first be worthy of it. They think they must fix themselves before turning back, that they must reach a certain level of faith, discipline, or consistency before they are allowed to start. This mindset quietly holds them back. Islam, however, teaches us something far more merciful. Allah does not wait for perfection, He welcomes sincerity. A 30-day journey of dhikr is not a test of how flawless you can be. It is an invitation to show up honestly. Some days you will feel focused, present, and spiritually uplifted. Other days you will be tired, distracted, or emotionally drained. Both days count, because what Allah looks at is not how polished the journey appears, but whether the heart keeps returning to Him. Sincerity is powerful precisely because it is real. It acknowledges weakness without surrendering to it. When you commit to remembering Allah daily for 30 days, you are not promising to be perfect. You are saying, Ya Allah, I am trying. And that intention alone carries immense weight. Allah loves effort that is genuine, even when it is imperfect. Perfectionism, on the other hand, can quietly sabotage spiritual growth. It convinces a person that missing one day means failure, that slipping once means giving up entirely. This is not from Allah. This is a trap that turns small mistakes into excuses to stop altogether. A sincere heart does not quit. When it falls, it gets back up and continues. In a 30-day journey of dhikr, consistency does not mean never missing a moment. It means always returning. It means if you forget one day, you remember the next. If your mind wanders, you gently bring it back. If your heart feels empty, you still whisper the words. This return itself is an act of worship. Allah knows your capacity better than you know it yourself. He knows the pressures you face, the battles you fight silently, the fatigue you carry. When He asks you to remember Him, He does not expect robotic precision. He expects sincerity. And sincerity transforms even broken attempts into beloved deeds. Over 30 days, this mindset changes how you view worship. It stops being a performance and becomes a relationship. You stop measuring yourself against others and start focusing on your own connection with Allah. You realize that even a few seconds of sincere remembrance can outweigh long acts done without presence. This journey also teaches patience with yourself. Many people are harsh with their own souls. They criticize themselves for not being where they think they should be. Dhikr softens this harshness. It reminds you that growth takes time, that hearts do not change overnight, that Allah is Al-Halim, the most forbearing, and He does not rush His servant. When sincerity guides the journey, guilt turns into motivation instead of paralysis. Instead of saying, I'm not good enough, you say, Allah is merciful. Instead of giving up after a mistake, you turn back with humility. And this humility draws you closer to Allah than arrogance ever could. A 30-day commitment also teaches discipline without pressure. You learn to build a habit that fits into your life, not one that overwhelms it. You begin to understand that worship is not meant to break you. It is meant to heal you. Dhikr becomes a source of comfort rather than a checklist of obligations. As the days pass, you may notice that sincerity deepens. At first, you remember Allah because you decided to. Later, you remember Him because you want to. Eventually, you remember Him because your heart feels incomplete without it. This progression cannot be forced. It grows naturally when sincerity is present. Another beauty of sincerity is that it keeps you grounded. Even if Allah opens doors for you, even if your faith strengthens, you remain humble because you remember where you started. You remember the days when your focus was weak and your heart felt distant. This humility protects your progress. The 30-day frame is not magical because of the number. It is meaningful because it gives the heart time to adjust, to settle, to form a rhythm. It is long enough to see change, but short enough to feel achievable. And throughout these days, sincerity is what keeps you going, not motivation, not emotion, but intention. Allah does not count the days you struggled. He counts the moments you turn to Him despite struggling. He counts the whispers made through exhaustion. He counts the remembrance done with a heavy heart. These are not small in his sight. By the end of 30 days, you may still have flaws. You may still have struggles. But you will also have something priceless, a habit of returning to Allah. A heart that knows where to turn. A soul that understands that closeness to Allah is built through sincerity, not perfection. And perhaps that is the greatest transformation of all. Not becoming flawless, but becoming faithful. Not becoming strong, but becoming sincere. Because a sincere heart, even with weaknesses, is always closer to Allah than a perfect appearance without truth inside. We are living in an age where noise has become normal. Notifications never stop. Screens never sleep. And the mind is constantly pulled in 100 different directions. From the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, our attention is being demanded by work, by people, by responsibilities, by expectations. And in the middle of all this movement, many hearts feel strangely empty. Not because life lacks activity, but because it lacks stillness. This constant busyness slowly distances a person from themselves, and more importantly, from Allah. Not intentionally, not out of rejection, simply out of neglect. Days pass without reflection. Weeks pass without remembrance. And gradually, the heart becomes tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. This is a spiritual exhaustion. And it is far more common than we realize. Islam does not deny the reality of a busy life. It does not ask you to step away from your responsibilities to become close to Allah. Instead, it teaches you how to carry Allah with you through your responsibilities. This is where dhikr becomes life-changing. It does not demand extra time. It gives meaning to the time you already have. When life becomes crowded, the heart needs anchoring. Without it, stress builds, patience shortens, and gratitude fades. You may have everything you once prayed for, yet feel constantly dissatisfied. This is not because blessings are absent, but because remembrance is absent. The heart was created to connect with its Creator. When that connection weakens, nothing else can fully compensate for it. Dhikr gently interrupts the chaos. It creates moments of awareness in the middle of distraction. A few seconds of remembrance can pull the heart back from autopilot and remind it why it exists. It is like opening a window in a suffocating room. The situation outside may not change, but suddenly you can breathe again. One of the greatest harms of constant distraction is that it makes a person reactive rather than reflective. You respond without thinking, speak without weighing words, and move without direction. Dhikr slows this down. It creates a pause, and in that pause, wisdom grows. You begin to act instead of react. You begin to choose instead of being dragged along by impulse. A busy life often convinces people that they will remember Allah later. When things calm down, when time opens up, when life is less demanding. But the truth is, life rarely slows down on its own. If remembrance is postponed, it slowly disappears. Dhikr teaches you that Allah is not only remembered in quiet moments, but especially needed in busy ones. Over time, remembrance changes how you experience busyness. Tasks no longer feel meaningless. Struggles no longer feel pointless. You begin to see your work, your effort, and even your stress as part of a bigger picture. Dhikr reconnects daily life to purpose, and purpose transforms pressure into patience. Another danger of a distracted life is that it numbs the heart. When everything moves fast, nothing is processed deeply. Joy becomes shallow, and pain becomes buried. Dhikr brings depth back. It allows the heart to feel again properly. Gratitude becomes sincere. Tawakkul becomes real. Becomes personal. 30 days of daily dhikr in a busy life can be revolutionary. Not because your schedule changes, but because you do. You become more present, more grounded, less scattered. You may still have deadlines, challenges, and responsibilities, but they no longer define you. Remembrance reminds you that you are more than what you produce or achieve. In a distracted world, dhikr is an act of resistance. It is choosing meaning over noise, presence over panic, connection over consumption. Every time you remember Allah, you are reclaiming a piece of your heart from a world that constantly tries to take it. Perhaps the most beautiful outcome is that dhikr brings calm without escape. You don't need to withdraw from life to find peace. Peace begins to walk with you into meetings, into traffic, into difficult conversations. This is not accidental. This is the result of a heart that is no longer starving for connection. When the heart remembers Allah regularly, even a crowded life feels lighter. Even long days feel purposeful. Even silence feels comforting rather than empty. And slowly, you realize that the problem was never that life was too busy. It was that the heart was too disconnected. Dhikr does not remove you from the world. It roots you within it. It reminds you who you are, while everything around you tries to define you differently. And in a time where distraction is constant, that reminder may be one of the greatest blessings Allah gives to a servant. In the end, a busy life will either distance you from Allah or bring you closer to Him. Dhikr is what makes the difference. It turns chaos into clarity, movement into meaning, and exhaustion into ease. And when remembrance becomes part of your daily rhythm, even the busiest days begin to feel guided, grounded, and filled with purpose.